Captain America's job to fix that. It's my job to fix it.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about Captain America: Brave New World. Now, overall, I like this movie a lot, but I do think it shows flaws in the Marvel system that I'm going to talk about later in the video. I know our own Colton Ogburn has some strong thoughts about how this movie should have actually been an Avengers sequel, and I want to hear about them when we check in later with him and Matt Singer. But before we build this movie up and rip it down, I want to show you guys this fresh new Captain America parody merch we've designed for our merch store. We have the America's Ass commemorative stamp, Cap's elevator RPG decision, ask if people want to get out or say Hail Hydra, the Ross campaign shirt, Together. The links for all of these are on our merch shelf below. So, going into this movie, everyone expected this to be terrible because there were extensive reshoots, but that's not really a fair reason to judge a film. Like Rogue One had its entire third act restructured in reshoots. Now, I do think this movie was produced at a time when Marvel was ordered to focus on quantity over quality, and that the long break from the Hollywood strikes actually gave them time to rethink some aspects that maybe weren't working. And as we'll talk about later on, I think that they were way overthinking things during those reshoots. This movie had such a huge scale, it really could have been Avengers 5. Now, I know Colton has strong thoughts on that, which we'll hear about in a bit. But before we talk about all that bad stuff, I want to focus on what was good about this movie. Sam Wilson is a good Captain America. He embodies the character's core value, which is empathy. This movie worked for me because it stayed true to the characters. Sam is a human being. He's conflicted about his place in the world, and he's not always sure that he's definitely making the right choices. And that makes him a good foil for his co-lead, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. Harrison Ford elevated this role from a background MCU character into a dynamic, nuanced character who is plagued by the poor decisions he's made in the past. Now, going into this movie, I assumed that Ross would be a villain, that he would create a team of supervillains to do his bidding like Norman Osborn does in the comics. But the movie plays our expectations against us. See, like us, characters like Sam, Isaiah, and the leader fully expect Ross to be a manipulative bastard. So the movie hinges on this central idea. Can Ross change? They recentered his character onto his desire to reconcile with his daughter, which made him a relatable person and not just a simple antagonist for guys in tights. Now, personally, I thought the leader was more threatening when he lurked in the shadows. In the light of day, he looked downright silly, like the two kinds of aliens from this island Earth had a one-night stand and then had a kid. But I do think the MCU made a good down payment on a future villain with him. The leader is a statistical genius who knows what a hero is going to do before they do. In Doomsday, he can play a Hannibal Lecter type role, advising the heroes on what's to come, since their resident futurist, Tony Stark, is dead. Now, I was a little disappointed that his goal actually had nothing to do with conquering the world, but the revenge plot stayed focused on character first, so it worked for me.
Ah, geez, person, you stink worse than Secret Invasion.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, Doug, I'm sort of shackled to this countertop for eternity, so I can't even remember the last time I showered.
Hey, I got a Mando deodorant package here for Ryan Array.
Hey, that's for me, thank you.
What's that?
Why, this is my whole body deodorant starter pack from Mando, the sponsor of this video. Mando is great for hygiene on the go. See guys, Mando was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. So they created whole body deodorant that you can apply everywhere, such as your pits, packages, and feet. See, unlike certain traditional deodorants that try to mask odor with a fragrance, Mando is formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. It's more like a pre-odorant. Mando reduces odor all day and continues controlling BO for 72 hours. Mando is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor level was a 5 out of 10, but with Mando, the average grundle odor is a 0 out of 10. And you can choose from 4 unique scents: Clover Woods, Mount Fuji, Pro Sport, and my favorite, Bourbon Leather. They even have unscented. So guys, let's take a look at Mando's starter pack bundle. We've got a stick of whole body deodorant, and notice how it doesn't show on the skin. We've got a spray, acidified body wash, invisible cream deodorant. Notice you can rub it on and it disappears right away. And for emergencies, deodorant wipes if you need to freshen up a few key areas before you go out. Guys, Mando products are convenient. They're great for your gym bag, your desk drawer, or even if you're on vacation or anywhere else you're on the go. Plus, it doesn't stain your clothes. Mando's starter pack bundle is a great deal for new customers. It comes with 3 types of deodorant plus 2 free products like the wipes or mini body wash. We also have free US shipping, and just for my followers, Mando Zalando is offering an extra $5 off your order when you click the link in the description below and enter the code SCRUSH at checkout. That's a deal of over 40% off. Now, back to what I was saying. Also, the action scenes in this movie were so much fun. I mean, we have seen countless MCU movies with kicky, punchy action, and I thought the filmmakers found really fun ways to combine Sam's wings, Wakandan technology, and his use of the shield. The movie also did a great job filling in the gaps of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, if you skip that show, I think you could watch this film and not be confused at all. I mean, it helps if you know Sam's character journey to get the shield and all the backstory with Isaiah Bradley, but the movie was still able to fill in the blanks with just a few lines of dialogue here and there. For me, this is the opposite of Multiverse of Madness. If you hadn't seen WandaVision, then you would be totally lost during that film. Even with Isaiah Bradley, they don't get bogged down in reciting his backstory, but they use his history to give Sam a personal motivation in this movie, to clear his friend's name. Now, I do think the movie hampered itself by being a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, but I'll talk to Matt and Colton about that later. Also, you know, the movie releasing a year later than it was intended gave the visual effects team really time to polish their work. So with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, visual effects artists were forced to work long overtime as script changes kept causing them to scrap the work they had already done. But in this movie, the aerial fight is riveting, and the Red Hulk looks, well, it looks real. But the movie is not perfect. The exposition dumps are student film level bad, and they feel like they were written because test audiences had no idea who Ross or the leader were, which is a fair point. I mean, the movie is a sequel to a panned film that was released 17 years ago.
That movie came out 17 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I am so old.
And Giancarlo Esposito is criminally underused by this franchise. Like, he's good in this part, but this guy has so much range as a performer. And in this movie, they use him as a one-note hitman who's there to deliver exposition. According to reports, his role was even added in during reshoots, and he reportedly replaced other members of the Serpent Society, like a character that was played by WWE star Seth Rollins. Also, I don't like that the movie ignored other big MCU events like Secret Invasion, but I'll talk about that after I check in with our all-star panel. So, those are the things that I liked about the movie, and I'm going to get into some stuff maybe I didn't think worked as well a little bit later on, but first, I might be alone with this, guys. I got Matt Singer and Colton Ogburn here with me, and Matt, I just saw your review. It's up on ScreenCrush.com. You called this the worst Captain America movie, and I believe the exact phrasing was a major disappointment. So, what are your thoughts on this film?
Well, I think it's the worst Captain America movie and a major disappointment. Colton, your turn. No, I mean, well, first of all, I think that saying it's the worst Captain America movie, like that, I like all the other ones. So it's
You're in good company. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It would have been, it kind of would have been hard to beat, the previous ones. I think all the previous ones are really, really good Marvel movies. Yeah. So I think that's almost just like, a fait accompli to some extent. It's maybe not as damning as it sounds when you first read it. In terms of it being a disappointment, though, I mean, I found myself, liking the Captain America and not liking the rest of the movie. In that, I actually found Anthony Mackie to be, a really good kind of new Captain America. I enjoyed watching him in this movie, even if I didn't necessarily enjoy a lot of the movie around him. I find him to be just like a really good, solid, dependable, likable hero at the middle of this movie. There isn't a lot of character development for him in this movie really at all, but I appreciated the stuff that was there, which was all about the fact that, Steve Rogers had the super soldier serum and he was like a legitimately superpowered individual, whereas Sam Wilson is this guy, yes, he has a jetpack and now he has that amazing shield, but he's like an ordinary, if very skillful fighter, ordinary human being, and he can be hurt, and he's not, a superhuman in any way. And the movie kind of occasionally returns to that idea that, that there's something aspirational about that, and even though he's a little more human, he kind of adheres to that Steve Rogers, I could do this all day, he never quits, he never stops fighting. He embodies those Captain America ideals. And so I thought he did a really nice job in the role. The screenplay for this motion picture, on the other hand, boy, oh boy, kind of confusing, disappointing, while you're watching it. And the more you think about it, the more it just kind of falls apart. It slips through your fingers, where you're just like, wait, why did he do that? And how did this happen? And why is this person? And where now? And it's one of those movies where when you're watching it, you can kind of accept some of the things, and as soon as it's over, like if you think about any element for more than 2 seconds, you're in for like, it's one of those movies. So, I guess I had low expectations, I suppose, but I was disappointed.
I mean, I came in with very low expectations. Maybe that's why I was so pleasantly surprised by what I saw. And there, like I said, there are some clunky points I want to talk about in just a second. But Colton, first, what are your raw thoughts after seeing this film?
Well, I have to disagree with Matt a little bit. I never found myself confused in the movie with the amount of exposition that they had. I felt like Kevin Feige was holding my hand through the entire movie, like saying, oh, and this ties to that. And, oh, we need to, it felt like they had like this MCU like vocabulary quota that they needed to meet. Like, oh, we need to say vibranium, the Avengers, and, whatever, insert Marvel word here, like throughout the entire movie. I still have whiplash from the opening like news intro that pretty much recapped like the events of Incredible Hulk and all that. I was like, Jesus, that is a lot of exposition right there at the front. The whole movie, I think, was plagued by that. I would not go as far as to call this a bad movie. I would agree that, yeah, it's the worst Captain America movie, but that's a high bar. I think even if this movie had been good, you could probably still say it would rank number 4 among the Captain America movies. It's not Sony bad. It's not DCEU bad. But I'm comparing this to like a phase 1 through 3 MCU film. And it just feels like Marvel just can't make those kind of movies anymore. It's really disappointing. It just feels like a ghost town over there. Like it's a shell of what it used to be. No disrespect to Anthony Mackie. I thought he was brilliant in this movie. I think he's great Captain America. I think Harrison Ford was really good in the movie. I love the dichotomy between their two characters, like showing them both like trying to prove themselves to the world and like become better men. I thought all of that was good. We might talk about the post-credit scene here in a minute.
Before you get into that, I just have a follow-up real quick before you get to your next point. So, like I said earlier, I think the movie was produced at a time when Marvel's dictate was to focus on quantity over quality. And like I said earlier, they did have that big year-long gap to do some reshoots. I think a lot of this clunkiness that you're talking about, like especially in that opening when like the newscasters even paused to say, oh, and Betty Ross was Bruce Banner's girlfriend. That to me felt like people came out of the screening and said, wait, who is this bad guy? Harrison Ford hasn't been in these movies before. What's going on here? I think that confused a lot of the norms and the normies out there, and then they felt like they had to really hold their hand, but it went way too far. You could always tell when there were reshoots. Matt, we talked about how fast the news of the leader broke to all the phones in the Rose Garden. There were just certain scenes that felt out of place, like they were added later on. But a lot of the reshoots were pretty great, like the stuff with Sidewinder and all that I thought worked well. Sorry, Colton, but to your next point.
I was going to say our post-production supervisor, Harriet, made a great point right out of the gate in this movie, the opening scene when Ross asks like his executive assistant or whatever, have you heard from Betty, my daughter?
Yeah.
Horrible,
like the executive assistant wouldn't know. The presidential aide wouldn't know he was like Betty who? Betty White? Betty White's dead, sir.
No,
Betty, my daughter. Oh, my daughter, Betty. Yeah.
Oh, your daughter.
Betty.
Your estranged daughter that you think about all the time. Got it. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the one you mentioned. Yes, I got. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, and I think all over this movie, you said I feel like I could accurately point out every scene that was a reshoot, like an added-in reshoot. You could even tell some of the stuff, like at the end, was him standing in front of a green screen talking down the Hulk. Like, it looked really
it usually
bad.
is him. I don't think they actually went to, like, the Cherry Lane in D.C. and did that.
But, like, the lighting didn't match up. But to the overall point...
Which is a curse among reshoots.
Yeah, the movie was tight, but I would have appreciated had they like expanded upon a few things and showed us more instead of telling us. And that's, I was wondering last night and this morning I've been thinking about, because I feel very torn on the movie. Like I enjoyed it, it was fun, but at the same time I was really disappointed. It didn't live up to like what I would hope an MCU movie would be, the clunkiness that we've talked about. And I think I figured out what the problem is. It was too much, I think, for a Captain America movie, especially a first Captain America movie with Sam Wilson. I think this should have been an Avengers movie. Have Ross and the Red Hulk be the villain. You can have the leader in the background. It's like this mahaha villain pulling the strings. But have Sam Wilson be a lead in that movie, have Captain America be a lead in that movie, but have it be an Avengers film. Have them like doing the battle of ideas against Ross and then physically having to fight the Red Hulk. I think that would have been far better as like a capper for phase 4. It just feels so out of place in this movie, in this phase, at this time. It was just weird. The whole thing just feels weird and out of place.
Well, and to your point, Matt, it's like Colton said, it's not really even a soft Avengers movie like Captain America Civil War. It really is a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, which is a movie that came out in 2008 that a lot of people may not even realize. Colton, you said this earlier. They may not even realize it's part of the MCU because so many actors have been recast except for Betty Ross, who only cameos. Do you think that they were over-reliant on that movie and that might have caused some of the problems you're talking about?
Wait, Betty Ross, is that his daughter? Is that
his daughter, Betty Ross?
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Yeah. Calypso. Sorry,
Yeah,
Matt,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
when I say the movie was confusing, I don't mean like necessarily the plot. I could follow the plot, and certainly there are scenes where it gets very expository. On the other hand, there are scenes where they don't explain anything, like when Bucky shows up and Sam Wilson is talking about his speechwriters, and you're like, why would Bucky have speechwriters? And then a few minutes later, they say that he's running for Congress, and you're like, wait, this century-old former Soviet assassin is running for Congress? When did that happen? What have I missed? That's a little confusing, I would say. But larger, it's exactly what you're talking about now. It's like, I don't understand why they made a Captain America movie, and the first Captain America movie with Anthony Mackie's Captain America, and it feels much more like a Hulk sequel than a Captain America sequel. You know,
A Hulk sequel without the Hulk.
right, without the Hulk. That's another thing that's confusing. Where is Bruce Banner? They talk about him. It's like Poochie. They keep mentioning him. Bruce Banner's ex-girlfriend. Bruce, he was tainted with Bruce Banner's blood. Bruce Banner. Where is he? They keep talking about him. That to the point where I honestly was surprised that he didn't show up at some point somewhere in the movie. I honestly, at a certain point, expected that he had to show up because they talk about him so much that it's almost ridiculous that he's not in the movie. So when I say the movie is confusing, mostly what I'm talking about are these like conceptual, structural issues. Like, why would you make a Captain America movie that is so indebted to this 15-year-old Hulk movie that nobody likes? Where, as you already said, like half the cast, has been recast. The characters have really not kind of threaded through the MCU for the most part. So yeah, why do it in the first place? Why, I guess they felt they had to introduce adamantium this way, but like, why include the Eternals in this? That's another thing that they throw in that a lot of people haven't seen that, is only sort of half-heartedly included. They never say the word Eternals. If you haven't seen the Eternals, I'm guessing you're going to be like, when did this celestial island appear? What is this? Okay, fine. Like, you're just going to have
And
to
how do
kinda
they know to
shrug your
call it a
shoulders at
celestial island when people don't know what the hell a celestial is? Like, that was the other thing, too. Like, wow, they really creatively came up with that organic name out of nowhere. For me, when I look at the movie, right, so I actually, years ago when they first announced this movie, I gave a prediction for it that actually turned out to be pretty accurate. I said, I think Ross is going to be using the leader to create his own New World Order, which is what the movie was called at the time. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get that plot, which I'll talk about later on, that we didn't get like the leader's nefarious schemes. But I like, like I talked about, that he is a character, the leader, who wanted revenge, which keeps it focused on Ross's character. And that's one thing I really appreciate about this film, is that Ross is this guy who we've seen in the background. And if you've seen Captain America Civil War, Ross is there. And the Hulk was created by trying to reproduce the super soldier serum. So these two franchises are not as different as, say, like Captain America and Thor. They've always kind of been woven into each other in certain ways. So I like that Ross, who was always in the background, is finally given a chance to essentially be a co-lead in this movie. And Harrison Ford right now, like in the twilight of his career, I think is taking a lot of risks. He's doing things he's never done before. If you don't watch the show Shrinking, you should. It's my favorite Harrison Ford performance. I mean, as an actor that I've seen probably since Regarding Henry. Like, he's just amazing in that show. And I think he's able to take this character. He could have easily phoned this in. This could have been like Harrison Ford in Rise of Skywalker phoned it in, but he really injected some real nuance and some feeling into this broken old man.
And he brought this level of like gravitas to the movie. Like, when you have such a renowned actor like Harrison Ford there, like statesman Harrison Ford, it brought like validity to the movie. So I was really glad he was there. I just wish it had been like in an Avengers movie.
Matt, we talked about this after the screening, right? If you're going to do the Red Hulk, this is not the Red Hulk, right? This is just Ross turning into a Hulk. Red Hulk in the animated series and in the comics has intelligence. He uses weapons. He has an attitude. I know we say this about every Marvel movie, but I kind of feel like this movie had ideas that were down payments on better movies. Like the leader isn't great in this movie. Frankly, he looks a lot better when he's in the shadows, like I talked about earlier.
Oh my God.
But he is an interesting villain because he's like the Clock King in Batman. He uses probabilities. He knows what you're going to do before you know what you're going to do. And the Red Hulk, I mean, if Harrison Ford is game to slap on a pair of mocap tights again, if they want to give him the attitude that he has in the comics, would be really fun to see as a member of the new Avengers team. But I don't know, Matt, do you think that's even worth pursuing, or where are we at there?
I don't think that's going to happen. I think the only reason to stick him in jail at the end of this movie is so they can explain why we never see this character ever again, which I have a feeling is going to be the case.
That's what I thought too, but I did read a quote from him where he was like, yeah, I'm just waiting on the call. So I think maybe he's up for it. I don't know.
I guess we'll see. I mean, I do agree that Harrison Ford looks engaged. He looks like he's having fun, when he's, like when he's got to do like the person transforming into the Hulk stuff. He's going for it. And I appreciated that. I just think, again, it gets back to the writing here where it's just like exactly, I mean, what does he want? Well, he wants to be president to help the country and the world and unite people and also make his daughter proud of him. But in order to do that, he's also going to like extrajudiciously kidnap the leader and hold him hostage for years upon end. And so it's just like, I just can't get, I have a really hard time wrapping my head around like who this guy really is, what he really wants, what his true goals are. And again, that's not Harrison Ford's fault. That's like the screenplay and maybe the reshoots making like the nuances or the lack of nuances, really kind of teasing that out where I'm really grappling like what does this guy want? What is his, like, what's going on beneath the surface of the rah and all that stuff, which again, Harrison Ford is going for it. I don't have any issue with his performance here. I just wish there was a little bit more, meat on the bone, as they say, in terms of his character and what he wants besides like, has anyone heard from Betty, my daughter?
I think the same is true for the leader. I feel like he was a very underdeveloped villain. Like all of the, villain time was spent on like Ross instead of the leader, who was actually the antagonist of the film. I feel like, I mean, I know who the leader is. We know who the leader is, but I feel like a general audience would be like, who the hell is this guy? What's his deal? What's he doing?
They explain it pretty clearly several times in the movie, but the problem is they don't show you that much.
Yes, I'm saying they should have showed it. They should have showed him in his lab and like, just given him like an emotional side, like make you feel for him, understand his motives, instead of just saying, oh, he's pissed off because 2008 Harlem Hulk fight thing. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, which is, again, part of exposition where we don't necessarily... for me, it's not a problem. Like, I've seen these movies so many times. I do this for a living. I love the MCU. I think this movie, personally, I think we'll look back on it and go, that's a good movie, but it didn't feel like necessary viewing. And to your point earlier, Colton, we've talked a lot on here, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, about the lack of Avengers movies, the apparent lack of planning. This is a franchise that was able to take a movie like Captain Marvel and make it $1 billion franchise because it felt like, oh, this is necessary viewing. And I think a lot of this is like, we don't feel like certain things are necessary viewing. We don't feel like we need to remember, oh, the leader was in this, right? As opposed to like if it was, say, Arnim Zola from The Winter Soldier who was the mastermind, we might remember it because it was more relevant to things that have happened more recently. But I think they've had so many random movies that have come out that have been somewhere between bad, mid, mostly mid, and some great, that it doesn't feel like it's cohesively building towards something at this minute. Like there's not the feeling that I have to go to the theater and see this. I'll catch it when it's on Disney+.
And it just feels like nothing has happened. Like, I think that this movie could have been released, like, the immediate movie right after Avengers Endgame, and it would have worked. Like, it feels like these past, like, the entire Phase 4 and what we've gotten to Phase 5, like, nothing is contributing to anything anymore. They're just like, here's a bunch of stuff they're in the same universe, but they never cross over, and it's not leading to any significant story, and we'll have random teases and post-credit scenes. It's just, there's no structure.
And that is the exact problem I want to talk to you guys about next, about what I think are the problems with the MCU throughout the multiverse saga and what I think they're going to be fixing in the post-multiverse saga era. Matt, Colton, thank you guys very much for joining me. You can find their social links below. So for me, this movie does work overall. It's a good Captain America movie. It puts character first, the plot was fun to work out, and it's just a good superhero movie, especially compared to the Sony films. But this movie is also evidence that Marvel is spinning way too many plates, and the creatives at this studio were just not talking to each other.
What do you mean?
Okay, so take a step back and think about everything that's happening in the MCU. Not all the cosmic multiverse stuff, just like the grounded global stuff here on Earth. In Thor: Love and Thunder, we see a nation of superpowered aliens becoming an economic superpower. This should be scaring the shit out of all the world's governments. In Wakanda Forever, we see other nations in the world feeling threatened by Wakanda, and they're trying to subvert their government.
The president wants to take offensive action against Wakanda.
And in Secret Invasion, that show ends with mass hysteria. Alien invaders walk among us, world leaders are being assassinated. All of this should have led into a movie that follows up on this global turmoil. The leader, as this mastermind figure, should have been using Ross to bring order to this chaos, order that he would then control. But instead of this film feeling like a culmination of all these other movies and shows, it's mostly a standalone sequel to The Incredible Hulk. And this is because MCU projects are typically siloed from each other to maintain secrecy. And this is maybe the reason why the creators of Multiverse of Madness never watched WandaVision or even read the show's scripts. But compare this to Phase 1 of the MCU, when there were fewer spinning plates. The events of Iron Man 2, Thor, Incredible Hulk, and Steve being found in the ice, that all happened in 1 week. They even released an official timeline, and that is why the fight from the Incredible Hulk is on Fury's monitor here. I miss the days when the MCU's world building felt like it was building toward one story. Like all of the Phase 1 films culminated in the Avengers, which set up the Winter Soldier. Then S.H.I.E.L.D. falls, so the Avengers have to become a global superpower, which leads to their hubris in creating Ultron. Ultron leads to the Sokovia Accords, which breaks up the Avengers and causes them to lose to Thanos. And all along the way, we saw the same characters in these movies grow and change because of these events. Whereas in the Multiverse Saga, every project feels like it is a separate, random story that might vaguely tie into the Multiverse Saga later on. The post-credits scene in this movie is a perfect example. It's a tacked-on setup for Avengers Doomsday. But overall, I did like this movie as a standalone film, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I just want to see Marvel get back to basics and tell compelling stories that also organically feed into a larger narrative. So guys, just a reminder, check out our merch links below for all of our brand new parody shirts. But what did you guys think of Captain America: Brave New World? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or on our free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time here, guys, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.